Good morning. We'll call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Algonquin Highlands is located on Treaty 20 Mishi-Saugig territory and in the traditional territory of the Mishi-Saugig and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. We also acknowledge a historical shared presence of other Indigenous nations throughout the area. We recognize these original inhabitants as the stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. Could I have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda for today? Councillor Shortreed, Deputy Mayor Dayoud.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayoud. Be it resolved the September 21st, 2023 regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated.
All in favor? It's carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Councillor Richards.
I'm declaring a possible conflict for agenda item 13D, the Hawk Lake Waste Management Service Options, as I own a business in the service area.
Thank you. I have no specific remarks today, except it's a lovely sunny fall day and glad to see everyone here. Could I have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes of September the 2nd? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved the September 7th, 2023 regular council and public meeting minutes be approved as circulated.
All in favor? That's carried. Could I have a mover and a seconder to go into public session? Councillor Shortreed and Deputy Mayor Dayoud.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayoud. Be it resolved, council adjourns its regular meeting at 9:02 a.m. in order to proceed into a public meeting for the purpose of zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA 923 Maple Lake United Church, part of lot 31, concession 5, geographic township of Stanhope.
All in favor? That's carried. Good morning, Mr. O'Callaghan.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
Tell us about the Maple Lake Church.
Yes, thank you. This property is currently zoned community facility and designated rural under the official plan. The property is approximately 2.6 acres in area with just over 87 meters of frontage on Highway 118. Surrounding uses are generally rural residential, and the lands are currently developed with a church and a cemetery. This property is subject to an application for severance, which would sever approximately 2.4 acres, being the cemetery lands, which the township will be taking over. The purpose and effect of the zoning bylaw amendment is to rezone the subject property, being the church property, from community facility to community facility exception 5, in order to recognize a deficient lot area and frontage, and to fulfill a condition of the conditionally approved severance. Notice of the rezoning was posted on the property, circulated to all property owners within 120 meters of the subject lands, posted on the township website and circulated to all prescribed agencies. No written objections have been received to date, and staff are recommending approval of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment.
Questions from council? I find it interesting to see that, as it remains a community facility, the variety of things that that the property can be used for. The only thing that concerns me is that the restrictions in size and parking, and it in my mind may not be suitable for some purposes, but I guess it remains to be seen who wants to acquire it.
Yes, it is anticipated whoever purchases the church property will have to apply for a further zoning amendment for whatever the specific intended use is of that property, and it'll be reviewed at that time.
Okay, is there anyone present or online who wishes to speak either for or against the application? Seeing none. So this would come under bylaws, yes, or do you have a resolution? So we just, could I have a mover and a seconder then to come out of the public meeting? Councillor Shortreed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Short Reed, second by Counselor Richards. Be it resolved, council adjourns its public meeting at 9:05 a.m. and the regular meeting resume.
And do we have a resolution to receive the report?
Yes, we.
So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive Sean's report? Councillor Short Reed and Barry.
Moved by Counselor Short Reed, second by Counselor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives report PL 10223 regarding rezoning of lands located at part of lot 31, concession 5, geographic township of Stanhope, Maple Lake United Church, submitted by Sean O'Callahan, dated September 21st, 2023. And the council directs a bylaw be tabled for consideration during its regular meeting.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So next is our delegation section, and first up we have Colin Rainey and Penny McEachern from the Dorset Community Partnership. And I see you had originally were planning on maybe to have Janine Van Den Heuvel with you. She's not going to be here today.
She couldn't make it, no, I can explain that. But we're quite able, we work very closely with Janine, so we're quite able to.
You need to, you're going to have to speak into the microphone, Colin. I think
Oh,
that's so that everyone who's listening online can hear your,
I understand. How's that? So
is it?
we have not been here for, I think, almost 3 years. Councillor Richard, it's our first time for meeting you. Welcome. The rest of you are familiar with who we are, but we always think it's useful to come to the townships that share Dorset Lucky Townships and brief you on a lot of the initiatives that our charity does. Those who don't know, the Dorset Community Partnership Fund is the local community registered charity. And so we'll go through a number of our projects that we do in cooperation with you. I know a lot of it won't be a surprise because on most of our community meetings and groups, we have representatives from council at those meetings. So Penny McEachern is secretary to the board of the Dorset Community Partnership Fund, and Janine Van Den Heuvel is our prime partner with the Algonquin Family Health Team, who manages the clinical aspects of the health hub. So I'll go through that part with her because we work quite closely. We'll do update and projects, Children's Park and Cedar Narrows at the Pavilion Park, cooperation projects that we're doing with other partners in the town, including, you'll probably noticed, a new community sign. So we'll go through this, but before we do, I want to emphasize that us coming to meet with you is all about engagement and having conversations around solutions, as opposed to not doing things. We're let's do things for the community. And it's very, as you know, awkward for our community, being that we split between 2 jurisdictions. Okay, if I could go to the next slide. Next. Are you doing that, Dawn? Oh, thank you, sweetie.
Is that magic lady behind you?
I'm sorry, I have my back to you. Okay, the Dorset Pavilion Park, and I'd just like to draw attention before I go through this very quickly that Don Tapscott is in the audience. He's the generous landowner who, after 10 years, bought the property and contributed it to the community going forward. As you may know, the Township of Lake Bays did a park study, and we were very confused about the reasoning behind canceling a 12-year-old partnership, which is deemed by all to be successful. Private-public partnerships grow investments in the community. We believe in them very strongly, that between civil society and our not-for-profit private companies, and of course, municipalities. The County of Halliburton is a strong supporter, the District of Muskoka, the province, and several federal government agencies. So we think this partnership has always been, very successful. The report ignored park programs. They said we didn't have them, but we do. We had children's art just last summer, sports, yoga, church services, celebrations of life, and the park is used extensively. It also ignored the fact that we help fund planting of trees, which of course in these days is very important, and many commemorative picnic tables, benches, and chairs. Through donations and grants, DCPF covers capital costs and some operational costs. For example, $480 a year in hydro. That's the idea of the partnership, right? We could do it if we work together. And we have a track record of 12 years on this specific project. We also do several capital improvement projects. A good example was last year, we got electricity from the washrooms into the pavilion so we could host live musical events, of which we had one this past year, raising money for our projects in Dorset. DCPF built the only public washroom, and I always have to be careful. It's a flush water washroom as opposed to the little porta potties. So they were the only ones in town. And as you know, with the issues around the rec center, they became very important. The Dorset Heritage Museum loves us because we save their septic system. So I know that's not very glamorous, but it's essential. The other thing that breaks my heart was I was told, oh, well, nobody uses them, and why are they a mess a lot of the time? We have a lot of transit and under-resourced folks in our community who do use that washroom. It's part of the age we're in these days. So having a public washroom and maintaining it is essential. We believe the park complements other recreation and tourism assets such as Centennial Park, the trails in the tower, because it's right at the base going up. Parking complements the children's park, Cedar Narrows, and the big one. The idea is to have all these assets working together to make Dorset an attractive community and bring in needed dollars from visitors. A concerned citizen, Daphne Curtis, did a petition and got 400 signatures plus over 300 on Facebook on top of that. We have been to Lake of Bays with 3 delegations, not 1, but 3. Don went to speak on his behalf, Daphne, and also we did in March. And there was no opportunity for conversation. It was just, I don't want to do this. So we're asking that a conversation on the future happens between the townships, and we're offering to be a party to that and continue to have a conversation about how we keep the park in the community and an open space. I might add too, with COVID, et cetera, the usage has gone up, as you know, without access to the rec center. It's become quite a used facility for the community. So I just leave it that we're hoping we can find a solution to move forward with this important community asset, not just tourism, for the community itself.
Just with respect to that, because I know that you've got other items that you're going to be addressing, but, I do want you to know that council are looking at this. We're considering and definitely recognize the importance of the park to the community. It's something that we will be considering. We were going to be having a meeting, later on with Mr. Tapscott to talk about possibilities there. So, you'll be hearing more about the direction that we decide to take in the very near future.
Greatly appreciated. And we always think it's important to have, because a lot of rumors always, so we always think it's important to have on the public record what we see as being important, and to offer our support going forward, and to reemphasize we have a track record. We've invested for 12 years, and we've worked very hard with Mr. Scott and the former owner on securing this property for the community, which of course is his and Anna's intent. Thank you.
Other project updates. Children's playground improvements, picnic tables, new surface, future commemorative plaque for Ruth Ross, equipment structure repairs, thanks to HCDC for support. Cedar Narrows Park, we've got some new benches and fixed the ones that were required. Flowers, painting, thanks to volunteers. We had a fundraising shipyard kitchen party, returned to the Dorset Pavilion July 22nd. Thanks, Jen. Collaboration with Dorset Lions and local businesses on the new community sign. Projects make a difference. Next slide, thank you. We want to demonstrate the value of private-public partnerships to Dorset, Knox United Church, keeping the last functional Dorset community space, public health approved kitchen and meeting space, accessible and open for volunteers and those in need of support. Facility upgrades for safety, energy savings and access. The project is ongoing, but DCPF has delivered $32,000 in grants so far. DCPF and Lions partner with Knox United on food security in our community, and we support the Baysville Pantry as well. DCPF, Lions, and PharmaSafe partner for pharmacy programs, prescriptions, non-prescription products, and clinics had large growth this year. DCPF, Lions, and community business partners invest in creative directional signage as well. The picture that you see there is the front of Knox United Church, where we're fixing the access. That's what that looks a lot better now.
So and just to put a fine point on it, as you can imagine, with our work in healthcare, what became clearly evident to us is the number of folks who are returning to either emergency facilities or the health hub because they couldn't afford the drugs. So they would get sick again. Or we had families, and the line was, we're very, very careful about not pointing out, but the line was, I didn't know children were so expensive. So we ended up helping buy them diapers, not to mention formula. So I think we often downplay and look at urban areas. We have seen, once we started offering the services, the need. For example, the PharmaSafe program that we fund was $15,000 last year in medical supplies. And that's on top of our emergency support that we do in the hub. So we just wanted to talk about making a difference. We're thankful for our partners, and you will note they are private sector partners and other public sector players like the Lions and the church. So it's our idea to kind of encourage cooperation, help defray the costs, and serve all of those in need. Next slide, please. This is just, it's kind of out of place. It's the proposed improvements to the park. They're not something we've said we're doing. There's something we said, let's discuss and look about the possibility of going forward, which means expanding recreational capacity in the community. So we'll go to the health hub in our next slide. So the health hub is going strong. We're coming up to the 11th year anniversary, providing comprehensive primary care for rostered patients. And our annual average is about 700. As you can imagine, there's a lot of ebb and flow and new patients in and out, plus cottagers and visitors. And yearly in the summer months, I hear from cottage and visitors how important this facility is. And I might add, people say, oh, well, it's just Dorset. No, we have people from Wilberforce, Minden, who access primary health care at our facility. We know, and we do apologize, there is a waiting list. But that also demonstrates the demand. And as we know, that's not out of sync with what's happening in healthcare across the board. The DCPF pays for a part-time RPN to extend services. Just to be clear, and I'll go into that, the Ontario government does not fund all staff there, only one nurse practitioner admin. And if the nurse practitioner is sick and can't come in, we have to close. So we do supplement the nurse practitioner, and we also have the nurse there. Really important things for when families come in, it's part of the peer professional counseling for encouraging folks to get their vaccinations up to date. So it's a public health plus primary and preventative. And I like to emphasize that it's not only a doctor's office, if you will, nurse practitioner led.
Just a quick question, Colin, if I may, when you talk
absolutely.
When you talk about the waiting list, is that somewhat fluid? Like, is it a ebb and flow of different people, or is it, you've got a constant 700 patients and?
No, we can handle more patients. We can only take on new ones depending on the demands of the currently rostered ones. So for example, it's kind of complicated, but the majority of our patients were what we call chronic complex. So in other words, it's not one, it's 3 or 4 things. Seniors often have that, and they weren't looked after, and or they are chronic care, be it allergies or kidney failure or CODP, which means they have to come in on a not constant basis. So it's hard to answer your question. I'm trying to just give an example, is that the more chronic complex we have, the more involvement it takes. Plus, the nurse practitioner approach is more intensive and extensive in terms of, oh, I come in, I have a sore throat. No, we're going to look at everything. That's the primary preventative approach, is let's do a full comprehensive workup on you. And you'll see that there are studies out on that, where when family teams do comprehensive care, they can anticipate more what's coming. Plus our demographics. As we know, old people like me need more attention. Not that I want to declare and be very clear for conflict of interest. I do not go to the hub, but given the data we've seen, there's just a lot more need. The other thing that makes it a little different right today is post-COVID. There's a lot of people didn't go or didn't look after themselves. We were flooded with demands with COVID and attached issues, but it just depends on what's going through the community, what's demand, what's needed. And to try and relieve this too, we do things like we fund a nurse practitioner to work out of the pharmacy whenever it's flu shot and COVID shot time, to take some of that clinic shot demand off. So that alone would slow down the intake and or ability to service rostered patients. I know it's a long explanation, but I think it's important to understand.
fine.
Fair enough?
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
Carry on.
We also did interior painting and security improvements. As you know, we've had a few incidences around mental health, and police service is 40 minutes away. So we've had to do quite a whole session to make sure it's secure and safe. And we also fund ensuring that there's never less than 2 people there. That was done in 22-23, and DCPF funded a 3rd exam room. We're looking at what we call job share, flex share, with the Algonquin Family Health Team to bring in more folks to deal with exactly your question, our backlog and the fluctuation of demand. And that may involve physician assistants that we can recruit or paramedic support. In fact, we have one nurse practitioner who comes in about every week and a half for a day or 2, and she dries up from Aurelia. It's, as you know, it's not any different than everywhere. We struggle to find innovative ways to keep our staff complement up to address exactly your question. And the 3rd exam room, that's not cheap. I mean, don't ask me what a medical extending bed costs, okay? Please. You already know. Well, Angie knows. DCPF pays for casual coverage for staff, as I mentioned, additional hours. Facility insurance, as you can imagine, goes up. Generator repairs, Dorset's not very reliable on the electricity side. Elevator repairs, all of those have increased. Thanks to Algonquin Highlands Council and the CAO for supporting getting fiber in the building. That was 3 years in the work. And Angie, I have to thank you and Mike Marsh, because it isn't just money. It's, and you, thank you, council, did vote support for that to get in. It's a complicated, prolonged undertaking. And the reason why we need fiber is when we put more staff in, like just at 3, 1 has to be off. We can't carry it. And you can imagine the imaging and the demand on our internet from there. Loeb Township relationship is under development, and just simply put, we don't really know what's happening. In the past, the District of Muskoka worked with the Township of Lake Bays and developed an agreement with us included, the Algonquin Family Health Team and DCPF. And it expired in March, and we're waiting on them to come up with a resolve. As a result of that, they have decided to withdraw funding to the hub and have not given money in 22 or 23. So we're just waiting for them to decide what they want to see in the agreement. So the hub continued. The next slide. This is Janine's part. The Algonquin Family Health Team operates and manages all clinical aspects. The arrangement with the Ontario government was that we would run their funding through a family health team, and then they would assume the clinical responsibility for the hubs. But we work as a partnership, as we have for the last 12 years. The NP provides comprehensive care to patients in family practice model, just like a physician's, very similar. And our NP is backed up by a funded physician out of the family health team. Care for rostered and non-rostered patients, limited same day and next day appointments. We're not a walk-in clinic. We just can't handle that. So we do ask for appointments, and services are insured by through HEROC. So while the partnership pays for the facility insurance, the clinical practice insurance is covered by the Ontario government plan. It connects with other FIT is family health team services like smoking cessation, mental health, cardiac and pulmonary rehab, nutrition, and more. And there is a big demand for nutrition, well-being, aging well, and specifically diabetes. As you can imagine, it just tracks the standard needs. Base funding, as I mentioned, the Ontario Ministry of Health. Just to remind you that we went through first of all, to get the hub, and its position is due to where we sit and the availability services. So South Baysville or Dwight isn't as much demand as Dorset because it was acknowledged, and this from the Minister of Health's mouth to me, jurisdiction does not matter. It is what the demographic community or market need. So we just want you to service those who are in need. And so that was the basis upon which we got the demonstration project. We went through 2.5 years and proved the effectiveness and sufficiency of it. And also the funding came through based on a partnership model. What's the community share? And I'm very intently entwined to the community share. As you know, I worked for 8 years on Huntsville Hospital Foundation board and established the community share for a lot of the capital and building improvements that are going there. So the dynamic of the partnership is essential to the Ontario government input, as it is in many rural communities. First Nations fund extensively in partnership with the provincial government these facilities. And as I mentioned, we manage a wait list for that. Before we go to the next point, are there any questions on the hub? Preventative programs, primary care, and the dynamic of the partnership?
Any questions?
Okay. The next one's really boring, but essential. So these are our financial statements for 22. Our 2023 are being worked on right now. And reason why we show this is to be totally transparent is we committed as a charity to sustaining a balance, allowing us to function for 1.5 years on our forward commitments to the hub, number one, and other undertakings that we had, like particularly food security and pharmacy. So a lot of people say, well, you've got money in the bank, and all our donors are fully aware of it and of our strategy. It's not an endowment. I'm careful to say that. It is a reserve we sustain as good financial practice given our forward commitments, particularly in healthcare. The next slide shows our donations. You can imagine why they were down in 2021. It was the fallout from COVID, and it was DCPF that brought in over $26,000 in grants just to keep things going. And we are thankful both to HCDC and the district which has a special Ontario program to help us with food security and pharmacy support. And people ask, well, what's food supplies? Well, whenever we can't get food donated for the food security, we purchase. And the other thing is, because of discretion and respect for privacy and confidentiality, we were giving out food cards for folks as well. And the 100,000 for the hub is about the annual, fluctuates between 100 and 119. What always happens is our year end is March, so there's always a spillover into the next year. So that's our financials. Any questions on that?
Are these taken from a audited financial statement?
We are not audited, we are reviewed. The reason being is we are reviewed by BDO Huntsville, and it was deemed that the size and scale of our operation, an audit is $10,000. So we've always in our community meetings presented our financial statements, explained they're not audited, and it's part of our whole push to keep our overhead down. You will note that our only overhead is actually paying BDO. The rest of our bookkeeping and finance is maintained by volunteers. All of our information is kept on QuickBooks and shared. Whenever we ask for funds from government grant folks or municipalities like yourself, we provide proof of payment and the invoice. So we figure that transparency is sufficient given our scale and scope.
I just wonder, given the projects that you've been involved in, for instance, the Big Win and things that you've acquired for the parks and, just all of the things, they're all folded into this, or is this a separate specific to
No,
the hub?
they are all folded in. And I'm proud to say that in April, we had a community meeting of which one of your counselors was present, and we had 2 grant funders present there who talked about how great it was working with us in terms of our reporting. So I've probably written around $750,000 in grants, both for children's projects and the parks and the hub. And we have sustained a very positive relationship with all those grantors. They continue to fund us, including the Ontario Trillium Foundation. And so we're quite confident about that. In addition, I'm glad you mentioned the big one. I've raised over 500,000 in grants for the big one. I'm still currently a board member with Don, and we're very happy about that. And those are the same folks, and they're very happy with our reporting on and statements and grants there too. And as I say, the grants continue to flow. The only problem we've ever run into has been the Township of Lake Bays. And they're not clear whether they want audited statements, so we're waiting. Yeah, I guess it's does that answer?
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like, I mean, there's more money than what we see here. Like, as you say, you raised,
No,
like,
there's no more. Oh, that, yeah. And annually, I'm
if
saying
it's
not.
all the partnership fund. I'm just trying to understand, sort of the reporting on it. When you say these are the partnership's financial statements, but there are other things that you've been doing involved in raised funds for.
That yearly, yes. So each year they come in, the grants are only in a year. So you're looking at 1 year out of 12 years in these financial statements.
Okay.
And some years there are more grants than others, like you can see there where in 20, maybe this will help, let me try. In 2021, we had $26,000 in grants. And in 22, we only had 1,467. And so it depends when the payments come in for the grants. But if you went back, you'd see more dollars coming in different years on the financial statements. So we report on those as we go along. Does that help or any?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, the next slide, please. So we're very happy with the press we're getting. This is the Highlander in July. And in addition to the projects and the specifics that we talked about, our objective is to communicate Dorset is open and alive. As you know, we went through a difficult year with Robinson's closing, the marina closing. We had 2 years where the big one wasn't sailing. That just all has an impact on the vibrancy of the community. So this was just an example of, we're here, we're open, we're functioning. We built a health hub that attracted a pharmacy. The whole idea of the community partnership was to bring people together and make it a place you'd want to move to or live in. And I might add, feel secure. As you know, we have a huge demographic of retired folks who need a pharmacy, a place to buy food, and some healthcare. So this is kind of declaring it open. And I might say we had quite a banner summer in the town, thanks to that. So we do a lot of communication, and we run a website, printed material promoting the community. And the next slide, please. So an essential part of, and this is just a picture of the Narrows, is partnering. So on the one side, you've got Cedar Narrows Park. We built that gazebo. It's helped funded by benches and chairs. The chairs, we just had a new one ordered this last month that's going up this year on the dock. And then on the other side is the SS Big One. And you may recall that around, I guess, 9 years ago, Don was on the board at the time with me. People were saying, oh, the big one's an elitist thing. It's just inexpensive. So we undertook a partnership with them, and I'm on their board. And we did community picnics, we did cruises, we had First Nation cruises where Rama folks would come up and we'd take them on tours of the big one. We participated on the other side of putting a plaque up. So those are just examples of, let's work together. Let's not talk about each other. Let's not differentiate seasonal cottager from local. Let's do things that demonstrate we are one community moving forward. So I'm happy to say that the big one had a banner year this year in cruising. Thanks to the last 2 years, FedNor, which granted us $190,000 to do major repairs on the boat so we could operate. It's hybrid, so it's environmentally kind of okay, right? Hybrid vehicles are expensive, as you can all imagine, especially in an antique boat that people don't really understand. So we're also happy to announce that financially, the Big One Gala gave us their $20,000 annual amount from the gala for the health hub. For us, that's a demonstration of confidence in the charity and how we're doing. And then just to add to that, I don't take this lightly. People at the tables at the gala wrote individual checks, which went to DCPF to the amount of $4,000 on top of the 20. So I think that again is a demonstration of bringing cottagers and locals together and seeing common cause going forward. And that's what we as a group try to do. And I think the big one, and as I mentioned before, the Pavilion Park is a prime example of the positive advantages of that partnership. So I'm sorry, I'm starting to feel like I'm proselytizing. I don't mean to. I just think it's been a while and it was probably good to come and give you all updates. So with the next slide, we'd love to entertain any questions that you may have.
Well, just a comment on behalf of council. We really do appreciate all the work that you've done, the projects that you've been involved in, the improvements you've made to the community. I mean, you're a prime example of partnerships, albeit a little ad hoc, but it seems to be working in the community, and that's the main thing, in my mind. That we continue to support you for capital improvements. The one thing I would say is that would probably be better if you officially requested that funding each year, which you haven't actually done. I mean, I know that we've had an exchange and we've contributed, but I think that there needs to be a formal request, and we'll continue to support that. It's always nice to be able to help. I know that we have drawn a line between operational costs and capital costs, and there's lots of rationale behind that, but we do wish to continue to support the hub in particular and Dorset in general and in every way we can. We know that it's been a tough time for Dorset and you were very kind in leaving out the Dorset Rec Center as part of the hardships, but that, you know, that's been one of the challenges and a huge one, which just added incrementally to, you know, the store and the COVID and, you know, everything that's gone on there. Anyway, I would look to council for questions, comments. With that, I guess, you know, just thank you for all that you do, for the information, for bringing us up to date. We, as you know, we will be having negotiations about the park. We're looking at things very favorably. How that actually lands has not yet been determined, but we'll keep you posted on how that goes.
Thank you very much for your time. And yes, we will, with COVID kind of made it where we haven't been here to brief you personally, because we usually do follow up with a visit for the hub ask along with the letter. And we appreciate after the last couple of years that you did respond positively when we sent letters for those requests. So definitely, thank you.
Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the delegation? Councillor Short-Reed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council received a delegation from Penny McEachran and Colin Rainey regarding an update on the Dorset Community Partnership Fund and the Dorset Health Hub.
All in favor? That's carried.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. We'll be in touch. But just hang on a second, Don. Just hang on a second.
Oh, bye, Don.
Could I now have a mover and a seconder to move into closed? Councillors Short-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, the open session of council adjourn at 9:42 a.m. in order to proceed into closed session for the purpose of discussing the following matters. One, proposed acquisition of land in accordance with section 239(2)C Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended, Dorset Pavilion Park. Two, personal matters about identifiable individual in accordance with section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended, candidate for Committee of Adjustment. And three, labor relations in accordance with section 239(2)D of the Municipal Act 2001 SO 2001 as amended, changes to workload and roles of specific employee and staffing matters.
All in favor? It's carried. Welcome back to the regular session. Before we get to building and bylaw, we've just got one resolution to pass. Could I have a mover and a seconder to appoint the new member to the Committee of Adjustment? Councillors Short-Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short-Reed, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that Fergus McLaren be appointed to the Committee of Adjustment for the remaining term of council.
All in favor? That's carried. So next up is building and bylaw enforcement. Hello, Mr. Moore.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. Another monthly report. This one is very similar to others. It's another busy month. 19 building permits, 9 septic permits. We received a little over 23,000 in fees and increased the value of the construction in the township by over $6 million. So
It's great. Now, if we could just get impact to do a proper assessment, we'd be off to the races. Any questions on the report? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillor Short Reed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, council receives report BLDG 1723 regarding monthly activities submitted by Greg Moore dated September 21st, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. That was easy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Next is Parks, Recreation and Trails. Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Council.
So you have your monthly report.
That's right. So a few things to highlight. This past month, we were able to get into the Lower Fletcher Lake or Skin Lake Landing rehabilitation project, and things went really well there. We had a great crew on site, a great contractor to work with, and everything's completed there now. And it looks fantastic, and we're ahead of schedule on completion, which had been the end of the month. So it went really well, and looks like may provide some really good insight as a model for similar situations in the future. A thank you to all of the residents on the lake who worked to through the disruption and moving some equipment out of the way during the process. Over at the Hawk Valley Park over the past month, we did remove the decrepit pavilion that is there. So that's been moved out of place, and the space is now open and available as green space. Our soccer program ended. We had a fantastic year. We had an end of year barbecue on the 22nd, or sorry, it wasn't a barbecue, it was just a meal, but a big shout out to all of the volunteers that helped run the program. And on the night of the event, we had the Dorset Lions Club volunteer to come out and help us prepare meals for 170 people. So thank you to everyone for that. The Dorset Tower this coming weekend is the first weekend that traffic control will be in place and advanced ticket entry system being used. Tickets have been being sold now for a couple of weeks, and this will be the first weekend that is in place. So as usual, we'll have OPP on the highway and traffic controllers on site. Had all of our all hiking trails did a number of maintenance projects on hiking trails, particularly getting ready for the Hike Halliburton Festival, which is coming, actually starting today and running right through the weekend. That has some hikes on a couple of our trails, so really looking forward to seeing that. And those are the highlights, Mayor.
Well, thank you. Questions for Chris? Well, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report? Councillors Richardson and Barry.
Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved that council receives report PRT 1623 regarding monthly activities submitted by Chris Card dated September 21st, 23.
All in favor? That's carried. And we have a resignation of a rec committee member, or is that members?
It is one member, and it's Jolene Thomas.
Okay. So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that resignation? Councillors Short Reed and Richards. And we thank Jolene for her participation. And I understand that she's still willing to remain on as a volunteer for events that she's interested in whenever she can, and that's great. Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, and by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved that council acknowledge with regret the resignation of Jolene Thomas from the Recreation Committee.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Take care.
Next up is Environment and Stewardship. And first is the committee update. We've got a couple of sets of minutes. Anything in particular you'd like to comment on about those meetings?
Maybe I could ask our chair to.
Madam Chair?
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple of meetings now with Environment and Stewardship new committee, and it's gone swimmingly. A lot of excellent ideas coming forward, a lot of consistency of spirit of depth of how much we want to get involved and how, and so I think it's going to be a very productive term. And as you will note from the second set of minutes, the sense right now seems to be that the committee members are quite interested in seeing how we might dovetail with the county's efforts on climate change at the lower tier level. So certainly not duplicating anything, but given the committee members' personal interests in climate action, we're hoping to find out through a conversation with Corey upcoming this next week, what we might do so that what the community action group is not going to be doing at the upper tier, we might be able to take on where appropriate at the lower tier, such as looking at our waste disposal sites and how we might support efforts in that department on public communications or public education or whatever it might be that the upper tier wouldn't be doing, but dovetails very, very nicely with climate action and reducing our community greenhouse gases. So it's all systems go.
It's great to see the level of enthusiasm that we've got on our new committees. I'm gonna say it's a delight. I was worried about, how we're gonna get things rolling again. And so we look forward to hearing the recommendations that come out of the committee. Any questions or comments on the minutes? So could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the July 25th and 28th? Or do we need separate resolutions?
No, that's fine.
Councillor Shortreed and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Shortreed, second by Councillor Barry, be it resolved, council receives the July 25th, August 28th, 2023 Environment Steward Committee meeting minutes as information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is your activity report for August. You'd like to give us some highlights from that?
Thank you. And my apologies. Good morning, everybody. So July, August are both very busy sort of operational times for waste management, and that keeps things going with just operational issues and working at the sites to keep everything running as it needs to be. Still ongoing meetings on our Blue Box transition discussions. That's getting close. I think I mentioned at the last meeting, we have our final agreement from Circular Materials that's just being reviewed by John Ewart, and hope to have that back at the next meeting. Single tier waste management review at the county, still moving forward. We've seen the first draft of sort of the background information, and we're just working on the second sort of stage, and that's looking at options for management of a single tier program. So those are coming along. In August, we had our hazardous waste event at Oxtongue site. We had 22 vehicles, 21 from Algonquin Highlands and 1 from Dysart. And that's about it.
1 from Dysart going to Oxtongue. That's interesting.
Very dedicated.
Are there any exciting or recommendations that you see coming out of the countywide waste management work?
Not yet, but that report will be coming forward. So that's just looking at operating waste at the county level as opposed to single.
And does there appear to be an appetite to do that?
I would have to maybe defer that question to you.
I don't know yet. We haven't heard. Any questions on Melissa's monthly report? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive that? Councilors Barry and Richards.
By Councilor Berry, second by Councilor Richards, be it resolved that council receives report EB 2323 regarding monthly activities submitted by Melissa Murray, dated September 21st, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is your report on the proposed waste scale for the Maple Lake landfill.
Thank you, Mayor. So moving on to sort of part 2 of our Maple Lake Operations Center development will be installation of a vehicle waste scale. We had 2 responses to our request for proposals from Rose Scale and Aero Scale, and we've evaluated them and provided 2 options, which are considered sort of the direction that we would recommend moving with that. The 2 options that were not brought forward were a different type of cell, and sort of that's the measuring part of the scale, which is hydraulic as opposed to analog. The cost was so significant that it didn't warrant the benefit that might come from that. So we had asked for pricing on that option just to see how great it would be. And obviously it was, you could see from the numbers we had, it was significant. And given the amount of traffic that we have and the weight of our loads, the benefits wouldn't justify that difference in cost. We could replace the analog cells numerous times before we would make up that cost difference. So respectfully, the recommendation from council was to move forward with option 1, and that's a steel deck cell with a steel deck scale with analog cells, and award that to Rose Scale at a cost of $128,100. And that $100,000 of that was funding through the modernization that was put aside, and the balance was budgeted for the Maple Lake operations site for 2023.
Questions? Seeing no questions, could I have a mover and a seconder then to move forward with the recommendation? Councilors Richards and Short Reading. Exciting to see that phase go forward now.
Indeed. We're hoping December 1st will be, that was the end date we gave as far as a contractor to have there, and we have talked to both companies, and both we're
It's achievable.
eager to get it done as soon as I could.
Right on.
Councilor Short Read, second by, no, sorry, moved by Councilor Richards, second by Councilor Short Read, be it resolved, council receives report EB 2423 regarding results of a request for proposal for supply and installation of a vehicle waste scale at Maple Lake Waste Disposal Site, submitted by Melissa Murray, dated September 21st, 2023, and that council hereby awards a contract for the installation of a vehicle waste scale with steel deck and analog load cells to Rose Scale in the amount of $128,100 plus applicable taxes. And further, council hereby authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the required agreement to the satisfaction of the environmental manager and CAO.
All in favor? That's carried. Okay, next is the discussion on the Hawk Lake area waste management service delivery options. Did you have someone who was going to accompany you with?
Yes, so we've been working with Candium Inc. as a consultant on this project, and they put this report together. So Heather Zirko from Candium will be joining in for the discussion. I'll try and answer any questions we have, but Heather is a resource if there's something we need specifics on. We can call on her to chime in on that.
Okay, so is she here in person or she's coming in online?
Online.
Okay, if you'd like to go have a coffee.
Good. Okay. This has been, something we've been working on for quite a while, and I know council has been eagerly anticipating this report and to see what sort of options are available. And we have gone through a sort of a 2-stage evaluation process in this report. And the first looking at sort of what all the options on the table were, and then a top level evaluation of those, just determine from the township's perspective, what was what would be viable. There were, there's sort of lots of options that might be possible, but just wouldn't work within the resources and the context of our situation. So a couple of them were taken out at that stage, and we brought forward the 5 sort of options that we feel most viable, and have taken that to the second stage of doing some actual costing, time estimates, and outlining what the regulatory requirements are, what the operational requirements might be for those. I will maybe leave it to council for questions. I'm happy to fill in any details.
Well, I wonder if you would mind briefly just going over each of the options, just, I mean, very briefly, without going into an awful lot of detail, just so that, the public can hear. Councillor, sorry, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
And my question would be, would you like to start with the top level, or just dive straight into the sort of the 4 or 3 options that were sort of shortlisted? Because I felt quite comfortable with the ones that were discarded, that we don't have to chat about those, but obviously.
No, I agree. I think, we just want to look at those options that remained after your review of what's viable and what's not viable. I know that there's some things that, would come to mind for me. I'm not interested in anything where there isn't proper supervision, of a project. There isn't, proper recycling being done, that's going to cost us angst and challenges in the future. So, I'm kind of with you on the top. Go ahead.
But having said that, I really valued having that top sort of map of the world, and then saying, and yet A, B, and C aren't really applicable. That was very helpful to contextualize the options we do have. So thanks to Cambion for that.
So I'm really looking forward to hearing you, like in kind of short form, sort of going over the options so that everybody can hear them, because I'm sure there are folks that are listening. I'm suggesting that this is something that would ultimately go to projects and priorities, and be balanced against other things that we've got to do, given, sort of the choices that we're looking at and the dollar figure associated with them. That there's, I just want to assure the public we're not going to make a decision on this today. This is information for us, and recognizing as well that, we've had a letter I've had a letter from the local lake association sort of saying like, hey, we need a little bit of time to think about this, and we might like to make a presentation to council, and that's fine. We've got a little bit of time. Well, this may be something that stretches over quite a period of time, depending on the direction that we take. So back over to you. And thank you, both of you, for the work that's been done on this. All of you who've done work on this.
And thank you. And through you, I will just give you a very, very brief, synopsis, and then please, I'm happy to fill in any details, and Heather can as well. From top level, there's a lot of detail that you can get into, but we'll just start at the beginning and go from there. So option number 1 is construction of a transfer station at the Hawk Lake waste disposal site property. And that would be constructing, developing land, bringing bin walls, attendant station, all of the what's involved in a transfer station. Number 2 would be a stationary vehicle option, and so this would be a vehicle that would travel either to one location or possibly more than one location. It would be parked there for designated times, and people could bring materials to that vehicle, and then those materials would be transferred likely to the Maple Lake site for proper management. And we've looked at 4 hours per week in our cost estimates, but it certainly could be different times, different locations. There's a number of options there that could be determined by the community and by council. Option 3 would be looking at a business managed site, and this would be a local business would essentially host containers for collection of materials. They would manage the site, and the municipality could provide assistance with transfer of materials and setting up those agreement terms. So
hang on, just to be clear, they would be responsible for transferring the materials, or we would be responsible for?
both would be options. Option 4 is to look at community-based sites, and so these would be sites that could be managed by a local road group, a cottage association, and they would be in, again, in agreement with that organization or group of people to manage that site essentially for their area users. And that would be a small drop-off site. It wouldn't necessarily be staffed on a regular basis, but somebody would need to be responsible for checking on it, making sure that the site was kept in good order. And then option 5 is staying with what we have.
And that too would be an option of whether the person who, the group, the community-based group who was responsible would transfer the materials or us. One, or it could be one or the other, right?
For option 4 with a community group, it would both are options, but it would be more difficult for a community group to manage transfer of materials and that sort of thing. Whereas a business may already have agreements for waste disposal in place, so they could piggyback onto that, whereas a community group wouldn't necessarily. So that would likely fall to the municipality and working with a contractor to provide those services.
When you say that the community-based group would have to manage it, my concern about an option like that is that poor handling of materials, like not the kind of recycling opportunities that we're, people just having a more maybe laissez-faire attitude to recycling and management, and how much cleanup would be involved in that, separation by our people if we were the ones that were cleaning up.
If I may, just to add on to that, it wouldn't be a matter of just having a site that would be open all the time. The community could determine, when there was somebody there to monitor the site. If it was at a smaller scale, there would be option. I mean, but it would be a different program. It would be more like a group curbside collection, and that's not an option we looked at. But these would be sites that would be specific, and the group of people using the site could agree maybe from 1 to 2 p.m. on Sunday. That's when we'll collect materials. So it wouldn't be just a free and open site for anybody to access at any time. It would still have to have that level of control over it, just to meet the requirements of a waste disposal site.
Deputy Mayor Dayu.
If we're starting with the community managed one, I suppose my first question would be, are you aware of other examples in Ontario where there are cottage community members who have willingly signed up to do this in their spare time? Because it strikes me that this might work really, really well for high north community. But I just wonder if you have any sense of where else they're happily doing this on a community basis, because I couldn't think of that myself.
If I may.
Mhm.
So there are community groups who do this on a different sort of level, and that would be as I was describing. So it would be part of a curbside collection program where they would have a site, where a truck couldn't go into, so they would be managing, at the end of the road, at their cottage or lake association or something like that to address lake users. So a little bit different, but those are all sort of the model that was based on, is that type of agreement there. And the details of how that would work would be very much up to discussion with the particular group who would want to take that on. So.
Did you have another question? Yep, go ahead.
I mean, I can just keep on going if you want. I guess my a follow-up to that on the community model, but really for any of the models would be, was it understood that if it were the community model, that such locations for the hawks could exist in a space where people don't have to get into their vehicles and drive their waste somewhere? We all are aware of the parking consideration at the hawks, and I would be fearful that if there were a model which says, okay, from 1 to 2 or 1 to 4 on a Sunday, you can deposit your your waste, etc., that you would have a whole bunch of people coming off the lake, jumping in their cars and trying to get to the waste management place and then get back and get another parking spot in a place where there are no parking spots. So it's really more of a logistical question of, is this a model that may enable us to prioritize? You get off your boat, you put your waste where it belongs, you get back in your boat and off you go. And I guess that question would be something on my mind for each of the models.
How that would work.
Yeah. So
And I understand the last option is status quo.
So any of the options that are location based, that wouldn't be a static transfer station, could be located in a number, locations to be determined, and could be divided amongst a number of locations or one location. Those could all be, decisions that are made. So a partnership with, let's say, a business could be something like a marina. So an option like that would exist. You bring your boat, you bring your waste to the bin, and you don't have to get in your vehicle and move. A community managed location, that is a possibility. That would depend on, what the agreement would be with the landowner. So it could even be a private piece of property, even that, a landowner could agree that, we'll take these 50 properties and manage it. And it could be that everybody brings their waste in a secure, a bin, or that there's bins there that they have access through a key system or something along those lines. So a lot of options there. And we've, sort of looked at the costs to provide pickup and management of the materials and the infrastructure that's needed to do that, and the operating costs to do that. The actual community agreements and that sort of thing would all be needed to look at what the community would be interested in doing.
When you say a private property, I'm just questioning whether you're thinking of a privately owned business property, or you're not talking about a residential property, or
A residential property is probably not likely, but it certainly is an option. I mean, it's just a matter of a common collection area. So the table would be open to that, to see what might be available. And I say private, it's probably not going to be somebody's cottage residence, but somebody may have a property that would be available, a larger piece of land or something like that. And this would not be looking at, there's no infrastructure being built or anything. It's just essentially that the community would be managing it, as opposed to having, municipality providing site staff and that sort of thing. It would just be drop off and pick up.
and supply of bins?
And then, discussion, we've costed it out at the municipality supplying collection and bins, and it wouldn't be bins like we have at our transfer stations. It would be more carts or something along those lines.
Councillor Berry?
Of those bins that you'd be collecting specifically, are you saying that in some of these scenarios, it would be just household waste, or there would be fiber and recycling, or glass and metal as well? My big concern is that by losing the management of this, that there'll inevitably be less recycling that happens. You just start throwing your batteries in your garbage.
I think any option, relies on good public education and good community engagement with our waste diversion programs. In any program, the scenario you've described, it can happen, and diversion rates do vary between different systems. And certainly that can be a consideration in this. So a group of very engaged citizens may do even better job than, that it is at a depot or something like that. So I think it's absolutely a consideration, but I don't know that there's a black and white answer to that. A lot's going to depend on the users and what their commitment to it is. I think certainly it's something that would need to be evaluated along the way as it develops. And I think with any of these, my recommendation would certainly be development and then keep evaluating. And they all, except for a transfer station, really, they can all be, they're all very adaptable to changes and modification along the way. So that gives some, some options there. So, and I think it is important to note, though, we are only looking at waste, particularly because that's the municipal responsibility. Recycling would really follow along with waste, and how that's handled would be sort of one of the things that we will have to look at along the way as the block transition comes along. So.
Just before I go for more questions, I'm just wondering, Heather, you're here on behalf of Cambium. Is there anything that you wanted to add to Melissa's comments?
Oh, you might be on mute.
I think you're on mute. Sorry, I didn't want to put you on the spot. So yeah, we can't, it sounds like we don't have sound. Our apologies. You had a question, Councillor Swartweed, then?
With the community managed, if everything went gung ho, but let's say after a couple of years, nobody wanted to do it, then what?
And that we've certainly identified that as being a challenge to that model, is that agreements may not persist depending on how things move. Given that's a weakness, it also is an opportunity, because with anything, contracts change over time, needs of the community change over time. So it wouldn't be,
It would come back to this then.
we could come
You would
back to
have to.
look at
We'd have
other
to.
options for there.
Where, I can see that there might be more challenges associated with that kind of operation where if, say, for instance, one of the things that we decided to do was a business managed site or business operated, that would be out on a contract basis, and, you'd set out your parameters and it would be renewed. Any other questions about the options or steps going forward? Go ahead, Councillor Dayu, Deputy Mayor Dayu.
On any of the options, or just the community one? Just
Any
of the options? Regarding the annual operating costs, and in particular the annual operating cost for the stationary vehicle, should the option be explored to contract that out and not do it in-house? Are the costs that are written down annual, as in service provided 12 months of the year, or it is so really we could consider a July and August service only, potentially, which would reduce those costs for maybe the business option, the business managed option, and the stationary vehicle option, but it would not change the cost presumably for the transfer station, because it would be open, apart from staffing potentially, because it would be open or there all the time. Is that right?
And just to so all of the options we looked at year round, certainly variability as far as the cost operating out or operating hours, seasons, that sort of thing are all things that can be considered. And certainly for the stationary vehicle and business, even for community, those could be, keeping in mind that, contracts, if it's contracted out, will vary depending on how long a service is offered and how many people we might have interested in offering a service. But certainly, and then a transfer station as well. Of course, there would be costs. There's a lot of the capital cost to build it is the highest part, but then annual, there's some costs that couldn't be that will be there no matter how long the site is operated, no matter how many hours or days. It has to be maintained year round and things like that. So,
Heather, did you have a comment?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, excellent. Sorry, I had to adjust some settings on my computer. I just wanted to mention as well for all of the options that we did present forward that there would be requirement to do further like consultation with the Ministry of Environment when the plan was developed, because they would require an approval. So just that's something else to keep in mind, is they may have some other stipulations regarding like how the locations will operate. So I just thought that was worthwhile to mention as well.
So I see, yeah, there are several of the options that would definitely require approvals through MOE, and it sounds to me like almost all of them
Yeah,
would require some comment, if not official approvals,
that's correct, Mayor.
which adds, you know, a timeframe to approvals or finalizing any direction that we decided to go in. So, Madam CAO?
I just want to add too, that I believe that, and the three of the options, so the stationed collection truck, the business managed collection, and the community managed collection, given that they would be potentially on private property, each of those, if they were on private property, would likely require a zoning bylaw amendment.
Right.
I figured that. Mhm.
That's why I asked about the, you know, residential property. I thought, any other questions? So, as I said earlier, you know, this has got to go to projects and priorities, and I'm quite sure that in the meantime, we will probably hear information from the Halls Hawk area. Given the letter that I did receive from the Lake Association, and they wanted a chance to review it and possibly come and you know, talk to us about what their options or what they see they would like to do. And we'll have to take that into consideration along with the impact. You know, I mean, I just look at the cost of a transfer station, and it's really when we go back to our first discussions and the dollar figure that was attached to a transfer station, it's grown exponentially. And, you know, if we're waiting for 2 or 3 years for approvals and, you know, everything to be put in place, it won't stay at this dollar figure either. And that is a substantial increase to our tax base. It's a big capital cost, and operating costs are substantial. So we need to think about that. Deputy Mayor, do you?
So moving ahead, I would be grateful to see if it's possible to do this. You know, what the cost differences would be, year-round services versus just peak services. So if we did July, August, September, or whatever it might be, if we offered services during those months, and then for the other parts of the year, services would default back to Maple, Pine Springs, etc. Is that something that I could reasonably ask for?
Well, I mean, it has been something that has been suggested in the past that, you know, okay, like what about offering a seasonal service? I mean, we've heard that. And I'm quite sure, you know, our missing member of council has heard that, you know, quite a bit as well. So I don't know. Have you got any thoughts about that?
I'm assuming it's possible to be
Mhm.
done. I guess the other thing that staff need to know as we move forward is if council's looking at something, for example, seasonal, is it going to be available to everyone or just the area residents?
See, there's the question, you know, because all of our landfills are open to everyone. So that would be a hard thing to factor in what the volume would be.
If I.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is a consideration in that obviously whether or not service would be available to everyone. Also, that particular area is in proximity to 3 other sites, so it wouldn't be expected that a considerable amount of traffic would use that. So people want to stick to resources and that they use often and are closest to their residents. So it certainly is just something to keep in mind with how much cross traffic there might be. For example, a location of a stationary vehicle at a marina. I'm not sure that somebody from, the North Shore Road would travel up there for that specific time, whereas it would very much meet the needs of those lake access property owners there. So for sure, there could be some consideration as to how that would be managed.
Councillor Berry.
Just in regards to the Dorset transfer station, like what would you say the top lessons, like what has been the wins and losses having a transfer station versus having them come down to Maple Lake? Obviously location that I mean more with, I guess, contamination. Has there been more contaminated waste that's being dropped off, given it's a transfer station? Do we have any metrics to even know that?
If I can just clarify, between like the amount of contamination between Dorset and Maple?
No, I guess comparing Dorset to as a transfer station to when it was a landfill.
I unfortunately, that was before my time, and we don't collect specific data site-wise. So all of our materials are reported commingled.
Right.
So I wouldn't have anything to know there. And it's also difficult, we hadn't done a waste audit at that time to look at those sorts of things. So I don't have that information available. I would suspect it's similar though, because it's still managed in exactly the same way as a landfill site would be.
Deputy Mayor Dale.
I'm still a bit intrigued about the stationary vehicle possibility. And it was mentioned in the report, find some contractor who could come in and do it, or the township could purchase their own equipment. Is there a sense, or could there be a sense of if we did purchase our own equipment, how it could be put to best use all the time for the entire township, or if it really would just remain only helpful in this one particular context? And I'm not even really looking for that answer now, but I wonder if that's something that would be brought forward as a proposal is developed. Because I'm speaking to the converted, if we're going to buy equipment, we want to make sure it's really, really useful for lots of folks a lot of the time.
I'm just kind of wondering about this request to try and hone in on the seasonal use and how, how close we can get to accurate numbers to try and do that, and whether we want to do that exercise now or whether we want to wait and sort of hear a little bit more about, what some of the preferred options are, and then maybe go and start to sort of hone in on the specifics, because I think there's so many variables with a number of these options that might be a bit of a challenge right now. I'm not sure, what council would like to see us do next. Go ahead.
I suppose in my possibly simplistic way of looking at it, it would be a question of if there was one contractor who has already said, yeah, it would cost more or less 235,000 or whatever it was a year, to ask the question, well, if you only did it July and August, would it be, remove 10 parts out of 12 there, or is that not how that cost is determined? Because if there would be a radical reduction in cost that could be specified right away, I think that would be helpful moving forward. It might not be that simple.
I can
Yeah,
offer
by all
it,
means.
and Heather may be able to chime in there, because she's been speaking with contractors about service and that sort of thing. But typically a service like that would be on an hourly basis, but there might be a minimum charge, like there might be a charge to set up and take down and transport and that sort of thing. But otherwise, timing for vehicles and stuff would be by the hour. So whether it was 6 hours or 4 hours, it probably wouldn't be. And then again, by the day, so just by the number of days that it would be. I think that it would be expected that could be that would be a variable.
Okay.
It just may limit how many people are interested in providing this service.
Yeah.
So do you want to set up and have an agreement for a service that's only run for 2 months of the year?
It might cost you more to do that.
It may,
That's the question.
it could go either way. It might give you more opportunities, may give you less opportunities. So
Yeah.
it's very hard to say until you got down to actually, chatting with a couple folks and seeing what they have available. And like I said, Heather, I don't know.
Heather, any comment there?
Yeah, I think there would be the flexibility to do a seasonal service if that's something that was, there was interest in that, to ask the haulers if they would mind providing that pricing. The prices provided were estimates. Like, I think we'd have to go out for quotations to get with all the formal details about the hours and everything that you were looking to receive. But yeah, I do think seasonal would be an option. And again, like Melissa said, it would depend on availability of contractors to provide that service. So the summer is busier. It may be more expensive during the summer months than other parts of the year. So like proportionally, it might be a higher cost, but it would be less than obviously offering the service all year. And then with regards to the truck and trailer version of that service, we actually, in the capital costing for that, did only include a portion of the cost to purchase the equipment. So we assumed that the vehicle would be used for other services. So just something to keep in mind is the cost to actually acquire a truck and a trailer is going to be double what was included in the capital cost for that in the report.
And waste the time to get it. It just seems like everything takes twice as long to get delivery. Councillor Barry.
With that model, what would be collected?
Just garbage and recycling.
If I may, so garbage and recycling were the only options we looked at for all of these.
Recycling being fiber and
Containers, yeah, okay. So essentially blue box materials. And I was just going to mention, if I may, Mayor, the District of Muskoka actually has a model where they call it Lakeside Collection, and they work on the stationary vehicle collection model, and they do both seasonal and year round. Some sites are seasonal, some sites are year round.
So is it council's desire that we try and see some seasonal comparisons? Yes, okay. Go ahead.
Do you know if, I wonder if we might be able to read up or even visit the Lake of Bays experience, or the District of Muskoka experience, because without wishing to launch too big of a bomb, it does occur to me that there are other parts of our township who are probably listening in and would be interested in finding out if this is, a service that goes from this lake to this lake to this lake on a certain day and then back to the depot, or whether it is only for one specific site, or just trying to get a sense of the full scope of how to make an experience like that as effective as possible for as many people as possible, bearing in mind, obviously, the costs.
Well, and the impact, I mean, if you're going to go lake to lake to lake, and now you're starting to have an impact on other landfill sites and other estimates that we've done. And this discussion is based on the fact that, that a certain area of the community feel like we've taken away a service.
I appreciate it.
And that's kind of what we're trying to address in one way or another. Have we done sufficient to continue to offer the service to them? Like, I would be hesitant to say that I see that there might be some efficiencies if we were going to, look at that option in expanding it, but I also see that it might, create some further challenges for us that we're not really prepared for. So for now, we're asking for some comparison work to be done on seasonal versus year round. Go ahead.
If I may, looking at seasonal services for all of the options, or anyone in particular, and if you're willing to just to give a scope of what you would like to consider seasonal. Is that?
Well, I think that you probably said it fairly well in June, July. Well, I would say June, July, August, September, even for seasonal. And so what you're thinking for all the options?
I'm very interested in hearing all the options because it could be that, for example, the transfer station, there's going to be a very limited amount of cost difference between the annual and the seasonal, whereas another option might be a radical difference between between the two. And that's where the interest is. It's knowing the cost advantages.
I would think that given the cost of establishing a transfer station, that you wouldn't decide on a seasonal operation, but I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Any other questions? Okay, so we look forward to Councilor Berry.
Can we learn more about what's happened in Muskoka? With their stationary collection vehicle program?
If you could maybe just clarify what would you be, I mean, certainly to visit a site, that's a possibility, or
Like a testimonial of what has this program, has it been successful? Has there been parking issues, travel, logistics? Has it been used? Is it a case of, 10% of the projected use is being using it, or is it a case of 80% of the projected area is being used?
Well, it depends on how much work we want to ask people to do. I mean, the work that has been done already by Cambium has been based on other examples. And, other services provided. I'd like, if that's, does council as a whole want to drill down on, I mean, we're asking for a pricing between seasonal and non-seasonal. Do we want staff and or consultant to drill down on the District of Muskoka and their program at this point in time, not knowing that that's the direction we want to go? We kind of like to hear from the people in the area.
okay.
I don't know. Well, I'm looking for other thoughts. This is a group decision on how we go forward. Go ahead.
That was very much in the spirit of what I was asking for as well, is, what can we learn from them, because they're right next door and there could be some really valuable lessons there. If it's done at a slightly later phase, that's absolutely fine. There might also be information that we can just look up that's available on the website, go to a spot on one of those days and just do that independently and see how far we get independently. Just to have a sense of that experience.
I guess we would have to quantify or qualify exactly what information we're looking for, rather than saying, can we just look into it? How many statistics are you asking for? Like, what information do you need? It's more than, can we just look into that?
The district, I have spoken with staff and they're more than happy to share their experience, and they're also keen to learn from our experience. We share some very common challenges, so they're eager to do that. I could suggest, I could approach them to ask for somebody to come and
Well, I was just going to say that might be the easiest way to approach it, rather than,
Yep.
Asking for more research, to just ask them to come and talk to us about how it works. And, that's an easy ask. I think would be an easy ask.
if I may, an option that there, time is always an issue with the staff, but the other is if council members had questions, like as Lisa has outlined, that they'd like to look at, it could certainly, work with them to have those questions answered, and I could bring those back as well. That's just another option there. I can share with the resources that, the district has shared with me as far as information. Happy to do that. They're public documents. So, or another option. So any of those are on the table.
I'd like to see somebody from there come here and just, do a bit of a presentation on the service that they offer. And then we can ask questions directly, rather than trying to go back and forth, through you and them. And I think that might simplify things.
Specifically in the Lakeside Collection program, the stationary vehicle, is that in the direction?
That's where you said that they had a program. Yeah.
And if I can ask to speak in person, or could that be done virtually?
Yeah, could be done virtually. Sure. That simplifies things, reduces mileage and time.
I can certainly make that inquiry and see if
That would be great.
would be available.
So we have a resolution. to receive the report, and I gathered to look into the seasonal costing of the options.
I just have a draft to divert project priorities for further discussion.
But we've also asked for in the meantime, for a cost comparison to be done on seasonal versus year round. So could I have a mover and a seconder for that? Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Shortreed. Thank you both for all your work on this. And, you know, I know that this is going to continue on for some time until we, you know, until we land on a solution that hopefully will work for everyone. Look forward to hearing, you know, from the area associations and the folks there and back from you and the District of Muskoka. Big decision. It was Jen and Julie.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council received report ED 2523 regarding the Hawk Lake Area Waste Management Service Delivery Review Report prepared by KME Inc., submitted by Melissa Murray, dated September 21st, 2023 for information, and further that a cost comparison be undertaken for options for seasonal versus year round and reported back to council.
All in favor? That's carried. And I'm sorry, gentlemen, but we're going to break for lunch. That gives you.
Lunch won't be here for a few minutes. I don't want to be ready till noon.
Okay, Public Works is next. I'm just wondering if we should make a switch because there's a little, if you don't mind, I think we're just going to switch between Public Works and Fire. Public Works has got more items on the agenda, so
not a favorite.
we'll go to Fire.
Morning, Mayor and Council.
Good morning. You have a monthly activity report that you'd like to give us?
Definitely. A couple of highlights that's here. We've been working with Emergency Management Ontario on our emergency response plan, getting it updated. So it was officially passed in 2018, so it's time for review. So there's going to be a couple of changes to it as recommendations going forward.
Oh, hang on. We need Sabrina. Sorry. And I'm sorry to ask, but would you mind speaking up just a little bit?
I'll try.
Your voice is soft. I was just about forgot you.
I think the online budget. Did you just finish the resolution?
Go ahead.
Right. So we're currently reviewed our emergency response plan with Emergency Management Ontario with a few recommendations and updating our bylaws. And because it was last passed in 2018, so it's a refresher for that. So there will be a bylaw coming forward before the end of the year for the emergency response plan. Chad, our communications officer, is really promoted Save by the Beep, which is a program initiated by the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office in relation to the fatalities we had last year of 133 within the province. So on the 28th of September, which will be next Thursday, it's the national or the provincial day for Saved by the Beep. So they're asking everybody in the province to check their smoke alarm. So Chad's been really good getting out on all our social media, and I think it's a real positive. The other item that I wanted to speak about is we did have a fire call back in late August on Switchback Road. It was really successful results. The timing of the call, it was a structure fire. We were in there, able to get in there and do an aggressive attack, and we saved the property, which is really nice to see. Ultimately, it was an accidental fire, and it was caused by their dog. Unfortunately, there had been food left on top of the stove, and the dog smelled the food and jumped up when the switches are on the front of the stove and turned the elements on. But all in all, the people still have their property. So that was nice to see. Other than that, open any questions.
The only question that I had have is with relation to the RFP for the four master fire plans. I just want to ensure that I mean, I know that we've moved much closer to doing joint recruitment and joint training in different areas. I guess I just want to ensure that I'm fairly confident that different fire departments in the municipalities don't all operate exactly the same. And acknowledging that ours is probably the best in the county, if it will address those differences. That, you know, that there are some unique aspects to each
Yes.
department.
Yeah, thank you, Worship, for bringing that up. We have put the request for proposal for the master fire plan out for all 4 departments in the county. We did work with Kate Loveland to ensure that we did work together. So the one proposal is going out. And how it'll work is we've all agreed as the 4 townships that will accept the one company for all 4 townships, but will be individually priced based on what we require, because we don't have near the assets like what Minden would have. So we're at a different level of studies that are required. We don't have retirement homes or a hospital or anything like that. So we are working together. So we're looking forward to that coming to fruition. The master fire plan is basically a building template for the fire service going forward, specifically to our municipalities. And then part of the plan is when they do it, the consultant will come in and present to council. So you can see all the options going forward to continue to develop the fire service. There was one done in 2012 in excuse me. The one part was a vehicle replacement plan, and council's been great. They followed it right to a T. We're right down to the very end of it.
Angie.
Just to answer that question, it will be separate plans for each municipality, yes.
Any other questions for the fire chief? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Councilors Barry and Shortry.
Moved by Council Barry, second by Council Short. Be it resolved, Council receives report FD 1423 regarding monthly activities submitted by Michael French dated September 21st, 2023, and council accepts with regret the resignation of Zach Watkins from Station 80 effective August 22nd, 2023, and further council appoints Aaron Russell West as a firefighter at Station 60.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, sir. Okay, now we will break for lunch. So for half an hour, we'll come back. Well, let's say we'll resume at 1:45. Welcome back. Next on the agenda is the Public Works Department. And first report is on the progress at the Dorset Rec Center.
So, yes, I'm very happy to share that the contractor has been continuously working in there since our last meeting. Currently, there is a contractor in there that is just cleaning the entire building. So they have been working really hard on moving things around. They've been cleaning sections of the building and then moving cleaned items into that building. Staff have been assisting that as well with going through the products that are in the building that can be cleaned and that can be removed because they're no longer in use, to help save everything being cleaned if it's not required. Staff have also been working with the building department to ensure that the construction as it goes forward meets all codes, regulations. And so far we just keep pushing forward with it. It's actually been a really productive 2 weeks there.
So just to understand the process a little bit more, like, I mean, I'm understanding they're going to have to, you know, rip some of the drywall and all of that out, and why they would be doing the cleaning before they do the ripping apart
Yeah.
part?
No, that's a great question. So what they're doing right now is they're cleaning all of the contents of the building. So what you don't want to do is you don't want to go in there, disturb all the contents of the building, get everything, the particles on those contents moving around in the air again. And then when they start opening up the walls of the building, the contents of the mold and things like that can spread on top of the contents of the building. So essentially, they've gone through and they've cleaned the entire building, the main floor, and they've cleaned, they're cleaning the equipment downstairs and things like that. And they're moving it into areas where they can basically build a package around it, seal it up
Seal it off.
so that nothing can get into it. So the rooms that they will be removing drywall and items from that will have mold on the backside and things of that nature, those rooms are sealed off. So if a piece of drywall is pulled off and the mold spores spread throughout, they won't go throughout the entire building. They'll just stay in the room that they're working on. They can be collected in there, cleaned up, and then removed appropriately. Yeah.
So how much longer do you see the cleaning process continuing before the actual ripping things apart?
Well, on our meeting the other day, we talked about that, and it looks like it's a couple of weeks out before we get started on the construction on the inside of the building. Like I said, the cleaning was pretty extensive. There was a lot to clean. And then also looking at the construction on the outside should start very shortly as well. So I'm guessing within the next 2 weeks, they should start pulling things apart, getting drywall pulled out and moving forward.
So it's good to see the pictures on Facebook and, you know, so everybody can see that there's work happening there and progress being made. So that's great. Questions, Councillor Dayu, Deputy Mayor Dayu, I'm sorry.
And would you kindly remind me and all of those at home listening in, when the exterior stuff begins, what will happen to the water fill station?
Yep. So through you, Mayor, the water fill station has actually been removed. It's no longer at the community center. It was removed a couple weeks ago. So basically it's located now at the very end of the Public Works garage on Main Street. We've actually had really good reviews from that while we've been working up there and walking around and talking. Any of the public that's come by said they've actually really enjoyed it in that location. It's much easier to get to. It's signed. It has been out on social media as well, the new location. So it's been received really well by the public.
Any other questions? Oh, Madam CAO.
I just wanted to add too that just so council is aware that part of the cleaning process is the contractor puts ozonators in the building every evening, and it literally they have to seal up the building. They run overnight, so that's part of their process, and that has to happen for a certain period of time as well. So.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming that's just received for informational resolution. So on to your monthly activity report.
So through you, Mayor.
Mhm.
The monthly activity report, there's really not much to report other than, you know, status quo for this time of year, working away on finishing up the seasonal projects. Two items that I did want to bring forward was the surface treatment project. It was completed this year. However, there were some complications with the project. So what you'll see coming forward towards the end of the year is that we will not have spent the entire budget on surface treatment because some of the surface treatment was not completed. So that was based on the equipment that the company was using had some mechanical issues. And such, they were able to put down road surfaces, but they weren't able to do the complete project. So that will be identified at budget, and it will be talked about further there. I just wanted to bring that up, that the roads have been completed, just the surface treatment. The style of surface treatment that we went with is a 3-phase, and they weren't able to finish one of the phases for this year. But it doesn't affect the overall construction of the road. So just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. Okay. And the second one was that we unfortunately had an incident on Russell Landing Road where a vehicle basically rear-ended one of our trucks that was towing a piece of equipment. So thankfully, there was no injuries on anyone's part. Right now, we're just going through insurance and looking at estimates for repairs. And as more information comes available, I'll bring that forward.
Thank you. Any questions on the monthly activity report? Could I have a mover and a seconder to receive that, and then we'll go back to Station 80 building repairs. I'm sorry, moved by Councillor Barry, seconded by Councillor Richards.
Moved by Council Berry, second by Council Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives report PW 2223 regarding monthly activities submitted by Adam Thorne dated September 21st, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. So back to Station 80 and issues there.
It's through you, Mayor. Yeah, staff, as the report shows here, staff noticed that there was starting to be some water damage in one of the corners of the building. So through further investigation, we found out that the wall was saturated, and some of the studs holding up the corner of the building were in fact rotten beyond repair. So working with the building department, we were able to get an engineer to come in and give us a design to build a stationary temporary wall that would help support the corner during construction.
Sorry, I'm still not sure about that.
I just told you to be quiet and here you were yelling at me.
So as we go on with this project, basically what we need to do is remove the drywall, the studs that are all moldy, and the mold itself. Again, we're back into mold. So it's not as extensive as some of the other projects we're currently working on. So we caught this one at a decent time. So basically, we would just like to move forward with this as to have it removed and then continue the project.
Okay, I see, this is obviously a priority, and I did one of the questions that I asked the CAO, I just wanted to ensure that, because we're using the same company as we're using at the Dorset Rec Center, that one project won't interfere with the other.
I can answer that because that was a question that was brought up by the CAO earlier in discussions about this. So no, it will not interfere. Pure Clean is a decent sized company with multiple employees, where the DRC will take precedence, but they do have other means to accommodate this project.
Any questions on that project? Hearing none, could I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report and move forward with that work? Councillors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Berry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives report PW 2123 regarding the Station 80 building repairs submitted by Adam Thorne dated September 21st, 2023. The council awards the mold remediation to Puro Clean in the amount of $18,500 plus applicable tax, and that council authorized this project to be funded from the Stanhope Firefighters Community Hall reserves. And further, the council hereby authorizes the CAO to sign any required agreements.
All in favor? That's carried. The next report is a report on the pricing of fuel at the airport. And just before you get into it, Adam, I just to say that this discussion sort of came up at the airport committee level. And while they have been advised that it's an operational issue and a council decision, that they don't get to make decisions on the price of fuel, it did become apparent that the cost of fuel at the Stanhope Airport was more than many other of the regional locations. And we had conversations in the past where our fuel prices were lower, which encourages more air traffic and, more people coming into the airport. So I really appreciate the work you've done on just sort of, explaining to us about, how fuel's calculated. And, we might make some considerations for future years, not anything that would impact this budget year. So over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so this was brought forward as the request from last council to lay out how we sell our fuel and how we come up with the sale number of it, of course. So what I just wanted to help maybe understand a little bit further when it comes into the 30% markup on it. I didn't add it in this, but if we do look at if council so chooses to lower that markup, based on the example that I gave here of $2.06 a liter after your 30% markup, if you were to drop it 25%, it only drops it 8 cents. If you were to drop it 20 cents, that's 16. And if you do 15, that's 24 cents. So when we look at the grand scheme of where we sit currently, we are anywhere from 20 to 30 cents more than anywhere else that we've seen through our research. So just keep that in mind, that if we're looking long-term at budget time, if we're going to drop 15%, what that may look like for us as a municipality at the airport down the road. So just some food for thought is all that was to be, just to help with some examples.
So should we in fact be looking at a percent markup as opposed to adding, you know, X number of cents or a specific dollar value to the markup? I guess that would have an impact on.
Yeah, I mean, we take that risk that we've always had that conversation quite a few times, where if we are comparable to, let's say, the lowest price in the province, will we get more flights to come in? Will we have more people coming in to fill up? That's really tough to say. I mean, they fly here, they get fuel, they grab a snack, and then they head out would be ideal. It's really tough to say.
Well, in that same, you see, that's one of the things that I'd heard from pilots was that there are cases where you know, pilots are like, hey, we're flying by, you know, we're going to go somewhere else because there's food there too. It sounds to me like the most important things to pilots are food and fuel prices. And, you know, so, I mean, we want to be, you know, comparable and encourage traffic here. So I guess that's something that we need to think about and maybe give some direction before next year's budget, because it does have a budget impact. I would look for any thoughts from members of council on this. I just to add that one request that did come through in the last set of minutes, which didn't have time to reach this agenda, but will have an impact before we have our next meeting, is a request from the committee that we reduce the cost of fuel for the fly-in. And whether council would consider, you know, dropping it by X number of cents a liter or not. And that's, I know that's kind of over and above what's on our agenda, but we would have to deal with it today if we were going to be able to do that. Thoughts? I mean, we would not be losing any money, just, you know, a small reduction to encourage fly-ins. Thoughts, Councillor Shortreed?
I'm fine with the reduction as long as we're not negative.
Oh, yeah, no,
Just
that's
for that one day. I think it's a great idea.
we have done that in the past. Now, not always for fly-ins, but when the Young Eagles were, you know, taking kids for flights, we definitely gave them a substantial reduction in fuel costs.
For one day.
Other comments? But it's a yes, no, how much kind of.
What was the proposal?
Well, they didn't say how much. They just asked if we would consider reducing the cost of fuel for the fly-in. So I don't, you know, what do you think would be reasonable?
That's a tough question. Based on the numbers that we looked at for surrounding municipalities or surrounding airports that have their fuel posted, I think that through conversation and agreements with the CAO, we could come up with a number that is comparable to something that's close to us, keeping our markup, whether that is down to 10%, 5%, whatever it takes to be within reason of what is the next closest price to us. I think would be fair, given that the day that I looked at it, we were anywhere, like I said, between 20 and 30 cents more. So if we're willing to drop 25 cents to be the next, not the lowest, but the next one up, let's say, then I think that would be reasonable for the day. And we could start with that at least. I mean, it's anything we do to reduce the price for fuel for the day is, I think, a great step in the right direction. That's my proposal, would be that we talk with the CAO and we come up with a number based on what's around us.
The problem with that is that we need to decide today. To pass a resolution in order for it to be effective for the fly-in. So, you know, I kind of like the idea of, like you said, 25 cents keeps us, we're not absolutely the lowest. We're still making a markup on the fuel. It is just for the day. Can council agree to that? 25-cent reduction on fuel? Could we have a mover and a seconder for that? Councillors Richards and Shortreed. Yeah. Appreciate that consideration. I'm sure as will the pilots that fly in. We really want to, you know, encourage more traffic, successful fly-ins and
Moved by Councillor Richards, seconded by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council received report PW 2323 regarding the airport fuel costing calculations submitted by Adam Thorne dated September 21st, 2023, and that council authorizes a 25 cent per liter reduction in fuel costs for the September 2023 Township fly-in event.
all in favor. That's carried. Thanks. Thanks, Adam. Okay, and next is screening and stockpiling of winter sand.
Yes, to you, Mayor. So we do this annually. We always put out an RFP generally this time of year for our winter sand, which is for our road use for winter maintenance. We did put this out to 3 contractors, and we received 3 bids back. 2 bids were from the same contractor. As you can see here, they all met the requirement of the RFP. They were all reviewed, and one bidder was under budget, and that's the bidder that we were recommending to go with.
Any questions? Nice to see something come in under budget. Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report and accept that tender? Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, council receives report PW 2422 regarding the screening and stockpiling winter sand RFP results submitted by Adam Thorne dated September 21st, 2023, and that council awards the project to Hawk River Construction in the amount of $49,725 plus applicable tax. And further, that council authorizes CAO to sign any required agreements.
All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, sir. Oh, winter road maintenance agreement, County of Halliburton.
Just one more. So through Mayor, yes, this is annual as well. We go through just the contract every year. We make small tweaks to it, just you know, to keep us up. And this is just the contract for 2023, 2024.
Any questions? Has there been any substantial change in hourly rates?
Hourly rates, no, no, we were pretty good there. Having the new software that tracks our equipment, tracks how much material we put down has been handy. It's been helpful. It's definitely easier to track where our trucks are, how long they're on that road for, and how much material is being used, which has been a great asset. So that's been great. There was a little bit of a difference between it and what we were doing in the past, as this tracks it a little bit more accurately. So we did notice that last year being the first year we used it. Other than that, moving forward, it's going really well so far.
Any questions on that? Mover and a seconder then to approve the winter road maintenance. Councillors Barry and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Deputy Mayor Dayu. Be it resolved, council receives a winter road maintenance agreement and directs a bylaw be tabled to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the said agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you a little later on this afternoon.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, next up is finance. And little tax write-off.
Thank you,
Go
Mayor and
ahead.
Council. So we just have the one report for a tax write-off under section 357, 1D raised by fire for $392.50.
Any questions? Mover and a seconder to approve that. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Richards.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved, council receives report TT 2223 regarding tax write-offs submitted by Karen Mintz dated September 21st, 2023, and council hereby approves a note of tax write-off total under section 357 of the Municipal Act for taxes in the amount of $392.50.
All in favor? That's carried. Next is the accounts summary.
Yes, thank you. So it's TT 2323 account summary for the accounts paid from August 9th to September 8th. Standard, nothing out of the norm. Any questions?
Any questions on that? Mover and a seconder to approve the account summary. Councillors Richards and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Shortreed, be it resolved that council has reviewed the expenditures incurred as set out in the account summary report TT 2323 in the amount of $1,151,289.13 and hereby approves payment as same.
All in favor? That's carried. And the last item is the appointment of the deputy treasurer, which we'll see under the bylaw section. Any comment you wanted to make about that?
I'm excited to see her join the team on Monday. So I think we've got a great person coming in and it'll be a real asset to the township.
Right on. Well, we look forward to meeting her.
Yes, her.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So under administrative business, I see we have a set of draft minutes from August the 21st for Stanhope Museum. Any comments or highlights anybody wants to bring to us?
This past Monday. So this was from our August meeting. I guess the large discussion I wasn't a part of was in regards to the tents being used.
The what?
The tents.
Oh, yes, well, that came as a result of a request through the airport committee, and there was a little bit of discussion that was required about, in fact, the tents were not owned by the museum, but by the Friends of the Museum, and they have agreed to turn the tents over to the museum, to the township. I've asked the CEO to work on a bit of a policy about how those tents would be used. To, you know, they wouldn't necessarily be rented out; they'd be for community of our Algonquin Highlands events only. That we try and have a practice of having the public works guys set them up for us and take them down for us so that they're looked after properly, instead of, you know, different groups of volunteers and not knowing, you know, exactly how they go together, keeping all the parts together. Our guys have got some experience with them, and they'll be looked after properly. And of course, it would be charged back to the individual hosting committee. Was anything else you wanted to comment on?
I think that the next meeting minutes will be a lot more to comment on.
Okay,
It's hard
well,
when we've had a meeting in between the old, minutes being presented here. What's really great is there was a request from the rec committee at this meeting to the museum committee to provide feedback for the tree lighting. And they provided the rec committee with some really good suggestions for the Stanhope tree lighting.
and they're willing to work with the rec committee on that?
Yeah.
Right on. I look forward to seeing a new and improved lighting in Stanhope. Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the draft minutes of August 21st? Councillor Short Reed and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Short Reed, second by Councillor Richards, be it resolved that the August 21st, 2023 Stanhope Museum Committee meeting minutes be received as information.
All in favor? That's carried. The next is the appointment of a clerk deputy CAO, which will come under the bylaw section as well. Any comments from the CAO?
No, just publicly want to congratulate Dawn on her new appointment.
Congratulations, Dawn.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and the CAO. Looking forward to it.
Okay, so we'll see that under the bylaw section. Next is a report from the CAO on the salary grid, which will also come under the bylaw section.
It will, and that's just again to reflect the changes that council has approved and just a couple of housekeeping amendments to job titles.
Any questions on that? I find it interesting to see members of the individual members of the public who have copies of our salary grid. It's just interesting to see that people actually print it off and say, oh, I've got a copy of that. Okay, good. Okay, so next up is the office renovation proposal.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So as council will recall, we did some renovations, and in addition to the office, that was completed back in 2017. As we all know, since that time, there's been a number of positions that have been added to our team. And we did some renovations in the basement as well, which provided 3 offices down there. Those are fully occupied as well. And as we know, there is more and more happening. Council approved the addition of a new bylaw officer. So to accommodate that person, we've had to make renovations to our copy room, which is no longer a copy room. It is now an office, or it's becoming an office. And so we had to put some thought around, right now that equipment is sort of scattered throughout the office. We need to make some space for that equipment. Plus, there's anticipated growth. And so with that, we're hoping that council will approve some funds to make another office to anticipate that growth. We've grown so quickly, and there's so many projects coming down that we know it's going to happen. And so, maintenance staff it's proposed that they will do the work. I've provided them the floor plan to give council an idea where that space will be. And so I'm hopeful that council will approve us to move forward with that. It is not budgeted, but it would come from reserves if council supports it. And I don't have an exact cost, but we're anticipating, given that our own staff will complete it, it would be far less than $10,000.
I know that you're just demarking the space where the office would be. I'm just hoping that there would be a door.
Yes, we'll provide a door for them.
I'm wondering about the where you're proposing, and I mean, I know that it's definitely, I mean, it's something that you guys have got to worry about, but because there's banks of file cabinets along that space, where are we putting all of them?
Those are our roll files. And so we have a plan for those downstairs at the bottom of the stairs where there's sort of a hoteling area. We've laid out that they can go there.
Okay, questions? Councillor Barry.
Just wondering which side of the rectangle they will access. Because I'm assuming that you will close off that walkway, the breezeway. So will they access sort of on the CAO side or on the tax collection side?
It'd have to be the CAO side because there's a sort of an area set aside for the photocopier because we're losing the photocopying room.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thanks.
So there are, I guess, you know, I mean, we need the office space and we don't have any other place to put it really on the main floor. I mean, personally, I just kind of, I feel for somebody who's in a space that doesn't have any natural light coming into it. But I mean, we've got to do what we've got to do to move forward. Any Councillor Deputy Mayor Dayu?
Obviously, staff is going to know what the best solution is, and so I'll absolutely go ahead with what's being proposed. My question would be, have you looked into those natural light bulbs that give at least the visceral sensation of being in natural light, or is there anything that we can do to make it just a little bit more natural feeling for them?
I definitely have thought about that. I haven't priced anything at this point, but yes.
I wonder if this space that's set aside for the photocopier, and I see it looks to me like this is a cupboard. If there's anything above where the photocopier would be, where there could actually be some kind of a window or some kind of a light opening up above there, or is that going to be filled in from floor to ceiling?
The challenge that we've had by removing everything from the copy room is that there was also cupboards and counter space and storage in that room that we have removed. So what we're proposing there is to fill part of the space with a bottom cupboard and a counter working space area. And then above that would be a cupboard for
More storage.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll just reutilize the cupboards that were in the copy room. So we're not buying anything new.
Any other thoughts? Okay, so could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report and authorize moving forward with the project? Councillors Richards and Barry.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Barry. Be it resolved, Council receives report CAO 823 regarding the office renovation project submitted by Angie Bird dated September 21st, 2023. And that council authorized staff to proceed with the proposed office renovations and to be funded from the administration office renovation reserve.
All in favor? Carried. Next up is planning business. And the first item, although I'm not sure how much input you can have into the first item under planning, is the recommendations, or are the recommendations from the cultural plan working group. There's a lot of information here. I acknowledge that there have been several comments made to me about the challenge in following the tables, and Deputy Mayor Dayu's graciously agreed to prepare a new chart that, you know, where you can see everything on one page, and we can also will be able to make it accessible according to the requirements. There's a lot of information here, and I look forward to hearing from, you know, members who have worked on that. There has been a suggestion that one of the things that we do is to fold in a discussion about the recommendations that are being made into our strategic planning process, because they fit, you know, quite nicely together. And I guess there will also be a decision about I personally don't see any issues with the terms of reference that have been laid out, or the recommendation that we establish a committee. There seems to be some different schools of thought about that. At one time, I think they were sort of like, the committee's done and this could be rolled into, you know, staff roles, but there also seems to be a recommendation, if there's a terms of reference, that there be a committee. So you know, we need to decide which direction to take there. So I look for, start with Deputy Mayor Dayu for comments and or from
Councillor Barry.
which one. I know who you are, but which one of you have taken the lead on this, would you say? Okay, well,
Jen and I did speak about this, and I said that I would sort of address the background
Okay,
and Jen would address the layout of the table.
okay.
So I first wanted to acknowledge the dedication to from the committee and all the hard work and vision that has gone into this, not just in the last term of council, but the last 2 decades in many cases. There's been a lot of work in this. I think it started in 2013. And one of the big things that we went through when we were reviewing the initial cultural plan is just how so much work has become already sort of part of the municipality's role in going forward. There's things that have been checked off that maybe weren't intentionally a cultural initiative, but through strategic plans and through different, council and staff involvement and different departments, a lot of good work has happened. Maybe just, I don't know if I want to say intuitively or whatnot, but the main things that have come out of this is to try and continue that infusion of culture on an ongoing basis. And instead of checking the mark that something was completed that was in the recommendation, that some of that is put forward by staff and different departments in regards to sort of coming to culture first versus checking off like, yeah, that was cultural, or that bench was a cultural thing, or that, thing that the museum took on that was cultural, but trying to kind of come at it from a cultural sort of lens first. I think the word that was in here was infusing decisions of culture into the corporation and fostering collaboration with other committees and various partners in the county as a whole. One of the requests that has come through this letter and through much discussion was consideration for cultural impact on reports, much like strategic vision. And I agree that some of the requests that they're making could be tied into strategic thinking. I know there is already a bit of an overlap when you look at the list of cultural or strategic goals. A lot of those things enhancing culture, or not having a seasonal viewpoint, having a full-time year-round viewpoint, and those type of things. Some of those are already inbred in the cultural plan. So I think some of the work is already happening, but I think to come at it with a cultural lens. Another thing was for the committee to continue, maybe not on a monthly basis, but maybe 6 times a year. And that it's important that every year there's an annual presentation to council. The committee has called it sort of their state of the art presentation, and that usually happens before budget and priorities. So if there is any financial impact, there's sort of forethought on that. The other one was to update the terms of reference. I reviewed this multiple times, but I agree. I don't think there's a huge change or anything that is controversial. And then supporting the next steps in the plan that are laid out in the table. So I would say those are the 4 main things from this letter. And so that's sort of my Coles notes on an update.
So would you see, for instance, some of the projects that are identified in the table, that council would look at them prior, or there may be recommendations coming from the committee prior to projects and priorities where council would say, yeah, that sounds like a good project to move forward with if it requires additional funding? Is that kind of the process that you see might happen, or what's the thinking going forward? Or maybe I should wait until we hear your half of the presentation.
Let's see, it's not really a half of the presentation so much as any clarity that I can offer on the tables, because I agree and admit they're difficult to follow a little bit unless you've been part of the process of aligning it. I would only raise my hand to offer my support to the idea that we do consider this during the strategic planning process, because as Councillor Barry was saying, the real feeling from the committee was, how would it be possible for the township to really own the sense of creating a cultural spirit across everything we do, rather than it being a series of one-off projects? Sort of in the same way that we consider financial accountability to be absolutely core and standard to what we do here. At every stage of everything we do, we pose the questions, What is this going to cost? Is it within the budget? Is it, what are the procurement policies on this? How can we do this well? How can we be transparent about it? Financial transparency and accountability are so interwoven into everything that we do that it's a part of our identity. It's just a part of what we do naturally. And the hope of the committee is to think of culture, it's sort of in the same way. So in whatever way that council and staff can create through, for example, the strategic plan, which I think is brilliant, it's about asking ourselves, how can we put culture up front so that when we are thinking about a new building, or when we're thinking about a new parking lot, or whatever it might be, we are already posing the questions of what can we do that can stimulate culture here too? Like what is it that we can achieve here that will continue to create that sense of identity, which is rich and cultural within the township? So the committee said right away, well, that obviously isn't something that the committee can do. That's something that only council and staff can really consider. But it is one of the committee's #1 recommendations, is that infusion, just like financial accountability is absolutely infused throughout. And I guess we do see we do see some cities who have, obviously big budgets for culture and for communications, which really showcase what they're doing culturally across all of their departments. And it's a little bit about grasping that as almost an ideal goal, something that just allows us to really derive it through the center of our operations. So yeah, I would agree. A conversation in the strategic plan would be really, really nice. And let's see where we come up with, because it is more that than here are, the list of projects for this year that we would like to see happen. It really is more on the former than on the latter. And so then the tables, which I'm very happy to type out in Excel, wouldn't take long. Basically, all they are is we have taken the vast numbers of wish lists and to-dos, et cetera, from the old cultural plan. And we've asked ourselves, okay, 10 years have passed. Are these already living somewhere in, for example, a new department that started at county, or, we have new committees or new staff, or is there, how has the map of the world changed? And do any of these things either already belong in someone else's job description, and that has nothing to do with the cultural committee, or can it be a suggestion that, hey, if someone else is working on these sorts of things anyway, why don't the cultural committee sort of allow them to get on with what they do best, and we will focus on some of the gaps. And so the table is really just taking all of the old wish lists, priorities from the cultural plan, and saying, this is where they line up now, given today's map of the world.
Thank you. That provides from both of you a clearer picture. So I'm sort of wondering, okay, just first, go ahead.
Just to add to that, a lot of these are from the original plan, and we haven't added anything to them. If anything, we've taken things out of the plan that have already been completed.
Well, I mean, you can see some of the examples that are, right here on the wall. Just one of a number. So, when it comes to, well, one of the things that we need to do is ask Angie to put some thought into, if there's going to be a committee, and there's a recommendation for a staff member to be assigned to that committee, that's Angie's decision about, who that person might best be. Considering that it's another added thing to the corner of their desk or to their job responsibility, that I'm sure that Sean is more than willing to go, it's all yours. So we need to do that. Do we, obviously we accept and receive the report today. Do we agree to move forward and accept the terms of reference? Do we start a committee, or do we wait until we have our discussion at the, when we're doing our strat plan? I'm looking for thoughts there. And I'm thinking if there is a project that's, that's listed there, something that we would like to move forward with, which might that be? So who decides that? I guess we can do that as maybe part of our strat plan process, because it would need to be folded into the budget, because there's obviously budgetary considerations. So I'm looking for thoughts on the timing of this. Do we just receive what we've got now? Accept the terms of reference? Do we advertise for a committee? Do we wait and talk strat planning? Go ahead.
When we were contemplating terms of reference, et cetera, we did not have the information about the strat plan, so that wasn't part of the conversation. And I suspect, given the ethos of the conversation, that the working group would be very happy to see how it rolls into the strategic plan first, and then it can change after. I think they'd be more than delighted with the idea, because that's the whole hope, is that it would become strategic. And then as for projects, do correct me if I'm making a fool of myself, but I don't recall anything being specified as being, this is what we want to work on this year as a committee, because the committee's intention was reconceptualize the plan and then pass her.
There you go.
So there isn't really a list. Is that your recollection as well? Yeah. So I don't think there's anything right away.
Okay, so it's my understanding the working group has done it. Doesn't go back to the working group, that their work is done, and we're more than grateful for. There's been a lot of work put into this, a lot of thought, and a lot of great recommendations for going forward. So it sounds to me like we leave it until we have our strat plan discussion, and then adopt the terms of, we just need to make sure that we don't, that step doesn't get missed. Councillor Berry.
Yeah, I support accepting this, and the terms of reference. I think as in regards to the committee, I think probably starting that in the new year. I think the committee felt very strongly that they want to be able to have input, or the old committee would like the new committee to have input in time for project and priority. So I think if you had a new committee start up in the new year after sort of strategic plan is in place, that would give them some time for background research on what's been done to date, look at the table, look at what's sort of their own intent, and then have enough of a timeline to put forward a report.
So there wouldn't be any projects completed until the year after next, given that schedule.
This fall, this coming, not this fall, next fall. But I think
Recommendations for next fall's projects and priorities, which would be for the following year.
And I think it's this committee's, from what I've read and from sitting on the committee, I think their hope is that the Cultural Resource Committee is really also seen as a bit of an advisory role. So if there's something that in the meantime, Township would like, I'm just thinking we have the new rec center being updated. Maybe there's wall space that the Cultural Committee could comment on or give recommendations for, or if we were taking on a project that had cultural impact that was recognized by staff, some of that may be ingrained in that we could come back to that committee that's in place to give comment or feedback. So advisory or recommendations. from
Well,
the
all our
committee.
committees are advisory committees, in that regard. I'm still not seeing like that for next year, you're still saying for the following year, because if the way you've laid it out, it would be not for next year, but the following year. The working group their work is done. So if you want recommendations for things that would happen next year, we would have to strike a committee now.
If I believe I understand what Councillor Barry is saying, it wouldn't be for projects started by the Cultural Committee. It would be rather if we do our strat plan and then this coming January, we strike up the committee and the committee is slowly working on their own plans. But in the meanwhile, the Dorset Recreation Centre has to choose its new colors. And we're wondering about, and that's a minor detail, but how can maybe staff and council would like some extra thinking to go into how we might change the wall space or put murals up or do something that just infuses that space with a little bit more culture, then the committee would be there to answer any questions, offer some support, offer some some background.
Yeah, I get
research.
that. I'm just trying to tie in the timing of this, that nothing's gonna happen next year. If,
But why I don't.
well,
understand
because
why
we
not.
have our projects and priorities this fall, like I don't know that we've got time to wait for our strat plan to take place. Decide the direction that we're gonna go, then advertise for a committee in time for projects and priorities and for a committee to do the work. I just don't, unless we, start looking at putting a committee and trying to strike a committee. They don't need to start working right away. That, if where does the recommendation come from? I'm sorry, I'm getting strange looks like, what's wrong with you? But when you're talking about not about projects and priorities next year, you're talking about a discussion next fall
This would
for the
be-
following year. But I just don't think that I'm trying to figure out if we've got enough time, if we don't strike a committee now to include, projects that we might not do next year in this next projects and priorities discussion. That's what I'm trying to come to grips with.
This would be outside of any projects and priorities. So, for example, if let's think of another example. If there was, I remember a while ago, a new road was going to be created for an application, and the thought was perhaps the cultural committee could offer some advice on the naming of that road. So that isn't something that is tied to projects and priorities. It is a group which is open and available to do some thinking and report back to council on issues that matter to council, not with a budget attached to it, just as things come along in the year.
Okay, I'm thinking, specifically, I'm putting dollar figures onto things,
No,
and
no.
I mean, I get something like that.
General advice.
But more often it's something that has dollars attached to it, when we want to do a project. I'm kind of waiting. I'd like to hear some thoughts from Angie on this, and then we'll come back to you.
I would agree that, council usually sets a small budget for the cultural committee each year. I think that can still be done. I think the process can still, follow through with the strat plan, appoint the committee in the new year. Council can then set the direction based on, if it's still based on this list, there's lots of things in this list that don't have costs attached to them. So I think there is still lots of time.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
So we received I'm sorry, go ahead.
They've often called that it's maybe we shouldn't tie it to budget and priorities, but they want to have an opportunity to come forward to council before then to kind of give a review of what they have done. So in that case, it would be what they have done from January to October, and maybe some things they see coming forward for the next year. So
When you say they, you mean the committee?
the
that we're
committee, the
about to
chair,
establish.
the person, whoever's going to give the presentation. Like I think Jim has given a presentation to us in the past. It's been a while since COVID and everything, but they used to come in to give an annual, what they call it, the state of the art.
Been a long time since we've
Yeah.
seen that. Okay, so we're accepting the report. And acknowledging that the discussion is going to be tied in with the strategic planning process and to go from there. I can see some projects that I'd like to see happen next year, but maybe that's where I'm stuck on budget and timing.
Is there a way to send a letter to acknowledge any of the work of this group?
I think absolutely that we do need to write to all of the members that have been on the working group and thank them for, because some of the members have been working on this for a long time. And there needs to be some acknowledgement of that. Because there's some great stuff here and, great plans going forward. And it's nice to see that, that there have been some things that have been achieved and are ongoing. I mean, it's like the HCDC section and economic development and tourism. Some of the things that we were hoping for, like a decade ago, they're in place and they're happening, on our behalf. We can probably do things to enhance that in some ways, but okay. Any other comments? So I could have a mover and a seconder then to receive the report and recommend that it go to strategic planning. Councillors Dayu and Bear. Who better?
Moved by Deputy Mayor Dayu, seconded by Councillor Berry. Be resolved, council receives recommendations prepared by the Cultural Plan Working Group regarding Algonquin Highlands Cultural Plan, and further the council defer the recommendations to the strategic plan development process.
All in favor? That's carried. And we look forward to you giving a little more thought to who might be attached to that group. Okay, next up is our planner extraordinaire to talk about severance.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. This is a severance agreement that is to fulfill a condition of a conditionally approved application to create a new lot on Quagma Lake. And the purpose of this report is really just to authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement on the township's behalf. But I'm happy to answer any questions should council have any.
Any questions? Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder? Support that. Deputy Mayor Dayu, Councillor Short-Reed.
By Deputy Mayor Dayu, second by Councillor Short-Reed, be it resolved that council receives report PL 10323 regarding a severance agreement for part of lot 25, concession 2, geographic township of McClintock, Quagga Lake, Gin and Tang, submitted by Sean O'Callaghan, dated September 21st, 2023. And the council directs a bylaw be tabled for consideration during its regular meeting, authorizing the mayor and clerk to sign the agreement.
All in favor? That's carried. And next is an application by Building Arts Development for proposed right-of-way in McClintock.
Yes, this is 3 applications we've received for preliminary comments with respect to a proposed right-of-way. The subject property was part of a plan of subdivision that has since been approved. It was originally approved as a water access property, but the owners have since obtained approval from the Ministry of Natural Resources to extend Maple, or a portion off of Maple Ridge Road, to these properties, so they'll now have access from the mainland. There's 3 separate applications because of different sections of the proposed driveways crossing the different properties. So it's just to ensure each property would have proper right-of-way access over the retained lands. Other than that, nothing really to note, and happy to answer any questions should council have any.
Questions? Do we have a single resolution for all 3 or?
Yes.
Okay, could I have a mover and a seconder then to approve this? Councillors Richards and Barry. Yes, absolutely.
So Sean, what exactly did they get from the ministry? Is this a license of occupation to build a road over Crown land? Is that what they secured?
It's a work permit through the Ministry of Natural Resources.
Okay,
Yeah.
over Crown land.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Richards, second by Councillor Berry, be it resolved that council receives report PL 10423 prepared by Sean O'Callaghan regarding proposed consent applications right of way located on part of lot 27, concession 1, geographic township of McClintock, submitted by the Building Arts Development. And further, council supports in principle the proposed consent applications right of way, subject to the following conditions: 1, payment of taxes, including penalty and interest, and 2, a copy of the draft reference plan be submitted to the planner of the Township of Algonquin Highlands for review and comment prior to the registration of the plan.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally is the Planning Department update. Anything that you'd like to highlight on that report?
No, nothing to highlight, but happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the Planning Department update? Councillors Richards and seconded by Councillor Short-Reed.
Moved by Counselor Richard, seconded by Counselor Shortreed. Be it resolved, Council receives report PL 10523 regarding monthly activities submitted by Sean O'Callahan dated September 21st, 2023 for information.
All in favor? That's carried. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
One quick question. How many applications are on the Committee of Adjustment?
4.
Okay, great, thanks. Next are our external board meetings. I think we've got a pretty comprehensive update on the partnership and the health hub. Anything on Upper Trent Water Management?
There has been no meetings of the Upper Trent Water Management yet.
Any news of one upcoming?
Nothing, 0.
Wow.
Mm.
Anything on the Muskoka Watershed Council?
They did their report on Monday for their report card. I wasn't able to attend as I had the museum committee meeting. And the next meeting is tomorrow, so next meeting I'll have something to say.
Sounds great. Under community policing, I have had another meeting, both myself and Mayor Burton. Nothing really other than general information about, their operations and how they're, they're staffing, they're up staffing, in a number of areas. One of the concerns that keeps getting brought up are things like issues on the lakes. And that's really hard. I mean, they'll never have enough staff and equipment to monitor all the activity on the lakes, but they are up staffing in that regard. So there'll be a little bit more activity there. One thing that has happened that is really exciting is that all 4 mayors have been asked to be involved in the hiring of the new detachment commander. And that's something that's really new. We've never had that level of involvement before. And to me, it's just indicative of an improved working relationship with the municipalities and, much better communications, which I'm really pleased about. So we'll be doing that early in October. I have next week a meeting with the Eastern Ontario Regional Network, so nothing really to bring to light about that, only to let Deputy Mayor Dayu know that there was an approval for the application in Oxtongue at our last meeting. I guess you wouldn't have necessarily an update from the library board. I did attend the last library board because unfortunately the CEO has submitted his resignation. So we will be looking for a new CEO for the library board. But there's a solid staff in place to carry things through, and he's going to be here for a little bit longer. So hopefully that's good. And we've asked for a little, continue to ask for a little bit more consideration for Stanhope. So that continues. Anything on community safety and well-being?
No, nothing to report on community safety and well-being, and the next Muskoka River Watershed Communications Committee is on the 10th of October.
Okay. Nothing under general business. Are there any notices of motion? Hearing none. Was there any support for any of the correspondence under correspondence summary? Could I have a mover and a seconder then to receive the correspondence summary? Councillors Barry and Richards.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Richards. Be it resolved, Council receives the September 21st, 2023 correspondence listing for information.
All in favor? That's carried. And next are a number of bylaws to go through. So could I have a mover and a seconder for the bylaws? Councillors Barry and Shortreed.
Moved by Councillor Barry, second by Councillor Shortreed. Be it resolved, the following bylaws be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. 2023-79 to set salaries and wages, 2023-82 to appoint a deputy treasurer, 2023-83 to appoint a clerk deputy CAO, 2023-84 to authorize a winter maintenance agreement, 2023-85 to amend comprehensive zoning bylaw 2249 as amended, application AHZBA 923 Maple Lake Church, and 2023-86 to authorize a severance agreement, Jen and Tang.
All in favor? That's carried. Mover and a seconder for the confirmatory bylaw. Counselor Short Reed and Richards.
Moved by Counselor Short, seconded by Counselor Richards, be it resolved that bylaw 2023-87 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its September 21st, 2023 regular meeting be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed.
All in favor? That's carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn. Counselor Short Reed and Deputy Mayor Dayu.
Moved by Counselor Short Reed, seconded by Deputy Mayor Dayu, be it resolved that the September 21st, 2023 regular meeting is hereby adjourned at 1:52 PM.
All in favor? That's carried.